Hey guys, well, we officially wrapped up the immune system in our last video. And before we jump into any next series, right, I thought this might be a good time. Sit out here on the porch, enjoy a nice warm afternoon, not hot. Because over the last couple of weeks, right, we've covered a lot of material. The nervous system, the respiratory system, the digestive system, the cardiovascular system, the immune system, right? We've talked about herbs. And we talked about mushrooms, and it really felt like we talked about mushrooms forever as I was researching mushrooms. But we talked about fire cider, traditional versus cheater style, right? The trademark war that went on around it. We talked about soup and how that plays into it. And after all those conversations, I hope you kept noticing something. We never stayed where we started. And that wasn't by accident. So why did I teach in the body systems, right? Well, because they're helpful. When you first start learning herbalism, body systems give you a framework. They give you a place to begin. If someone says, I'm learning about digestive herbs, well, you pretty much know where they're sitting. If someone says, I'm learning about cardiovascular herbs, well, you pretty much know where they're coming from too. The body systems create order. And when you're trying to learn hundreds of herbs in this chaos of knowledge, order is helpful. But eventually something starts to happen. These beautiful little boxes that we put all the herbs in, well, they fall away. So think about chamomile, right? We've talked about it as a digestive herb, right? We've talked about it as a nice bedtime tea, right? Most people find it hilarious to find it moves from bedtime tea to tummy help, right? We've talked about how it could help promote relaxation. We've talked about including it and how it helps in formulation of tea blends. So what is it? Is it a digestive herb, a sleep herb, a calming herb? Yes. Yes, it is. That's the answer to that question. So then we talked about ginger in a couple different places, right? Ginger showed up in the digestive system, right? Ginger showed back up in our fire ciders, right? Ginger always comes into the conversation when you talk about warming foods. And suddenly ginger wasn't staying in the right category anymore either. Hawthorn was another example, right? Hawthorn is always usually, right, stays in heart health, but there's other benefits, right? You've got circulation, antioxidants. It can be in different foods, teas, right? And suddenly we weren't talking about one body system anymore. We're talking about the entire person. It's kind of where we've been driving this bus to, right? The fungi amongi really drove home the point more, right? The mushrooms really made it impossible to ignore, right? Lion's mane wasn't just that nervous system mushroom. Turkey tail wasn't just for the immune system. Reishi didn't just stay where we wanted it to stay. Cordyceps crossed over and weirded those out a little bit. None of them played by the rules. And I was trying to hint at that all along. Plants don't organize themselves according to chapters in the anatomy textbook. Wouldn't it be nice if everything just had its own little perfect box? But if we're honest with ourselves, we don't really stay in our own little boxes either. Have you ever been stressed and suddenly had digestive issues? Have you ever lost sleep and felt exhausted, irritable, and hungry all day long? Have you ever gone through a particular difficult season in your life and noticed increase or loss of appetite? Well, of course you have. We all have. It's the human condition. And it's because the human body isn't a collection of isolated systems. It's an interconnected network, right? So this is where your thinking starts to change, right? So I know personally from my own experience, as I continued my education in herbalism, nutrition, holistic health, naturopathy, right, I started noticing some things. The traditions may be different, but many of the principles are surprisingly similar. Chinese medicine looks at patterns. Ayurvedic medicine looks at patterns. Herbalism totally looks at patterns, right? Nutrition, we're all looking for the patterns, and even modern health research itself looks at relationships and patterns between the systems. That's kind of fascinating, right? Because maybe we've spent too much time asking, what herb should I take for this symptom? And not enough time asking, what's the bigger picture here? And this is why food keeps showing up in the conversation, right? Not that I'm constantly hungry, but I don't know if you noticed, right? No matter where we go, we're always somewhere with foods, right? Soups, broths, spices, fermented foods, teas. They've kind of always circled around. You've got, we brought in the herbal vinegars, right? Looking back at grandma's recipes, right? And seeing what benefits it had there. And that's one of the reasons I want to spend more time talking about food as medicine. Because no matter how many herbs we learn, if we ignore nutrition, we're only seeing part of the picture. You can take as much holy basil as you want, but if you're eating McDonald's every night, it's not going to do you any good. So this is why I want to expand the conversations, right? We're still going to talk about herbs a lot. They're not going anywhere. But we're also going to start talking about things like, what does holistic health actually mean? What can we glean from everyday medicine? What can we glean from Chinese medicine? What role does nutrition play overall? How does massage therapy fit into the conversation? Big fan of massage therapy. How does acupuncture fit into the conversation? Do hormones affect any and all of this? And something I'm particularly excited about, how do we become better consumers of our health information? Because I see a lot of concerning stuff out of there, right? So we need to talk about credentials, right? What does accredited actually mean? What does certified actually mean? What does licensed mean? Board certified? How do we learn to ask better questions? Because education empowers us, right? And I think that's one of the most important lessons we can learn. Just because somebody puts a bunch of alphabets behind their, like alphabet letters behind their name, doesn't necessarily mean what we think it means, right? So as we move into this next chapter together, right, I want you to keep one thing in mind. Don't get so focused on individual herbs that you forget to look at the whole person. Because that's what holistic health is. It's not one herb, one tea, Fergus, one supplement. It's the entire picture. And honestly, I think that's what I've been teaching all along. So find your favorite tea blend and get comfortable, guys, because I have a feeling our conversations are about to get a whole lot more interesting. So until next time, stay rooted, stay curious, and as always, keep growing in grace.